Thank you for joining. My name is Mike Eister. I'm a solutions engineer at Push Technology. I've been inside of the integration and messaging space for well over 25 years. And again, here with Johnny Lee, president of ePanicButton. With that said, I'd like to hand it over to Johnny for his introduction.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Mike, and to be working with Push Technology Diffusion. This is really exciting because I'm so into this program, helping my program save lives. And that was the purpose of what I do. I have a panic button system, and I have a software program that's been around since 2008, and we provide it to healthcare, government, education, industries across the board. But the point is I wanted to provide security information, security support, security consultation, security policies through the technology, which I think needs to be perfect. So what we've done was work with Push Technology to make sure that we've got the perfect system in place.
Great. Thank you so much, Johnny. So we'll follow a brief format for this webinar. And the three primary topics, I'll do a quick introduction of emergency and mass notification platforms and requirements. Then we'll hear from Johnny, industry leader. And then at the final step, we will introduce streaming event notifications using Push Technologies Diffusion. So let's get started. Emergency and mass notification services, according to Gartner and a Gartner field report that's been produced, automate the distribution and management of messages. This could be to an organization's stakeholders, interested parties, third parties, participants potentially inside of events. And it could be through a number of different types of endpoints. If we look at how these are classified, if you from the top perspective, life and safety and security, right? So something that's very close to ePanicButton. And then public safety. So again, notifications, messages about these, and then really giving the capability for crisis management, giving them that actionable insight to then perform the corrective steps and actions. And as we look at this from an expanded use case, critical business operations types of events, impact to supply chain possibly through these notifications, impact to facilities. And we'll see examples of this in just a second. And then IT service alerting, potentially network, potentially phone, etc. So now if we look at the types of data, they flow into three primary categories here. Emergency, so it could be building, facility, campus notifications, security threats, lockdowns and crime, or potentially severe weather. There are many more. This is not fully inclusive, but there are many more emergency types of events and notifications that occur that really flow and stream into these different types of categories. As Johnny will speak to in just a couple minutes here. Could be corporate communications, could be internal messaging, it could be external messaging, it could be employee teaming, employee collaboration, could potentially be facilities and infrastructure events, potentially parking, fire drills, etc. Or infrastructure, as I had mentioned earlier, there could be messages about internet availability, phone availability, potentially some system outages, and then your business processes themselves, such as supply chain events themselves, right? So being able to take product in and go directly to your manufacture process and then directly create product could very much be another example of streaming notifications. And then business process interruptions, the ability to process orders, the ability to ship, etc. So any one of these could be a notification potentially categorized as high priority using Diffusion as that platform. So when we look at this a little bit deeper, we've spoken about the classification of events, the classification of notifications, and where do these things come from, right? There could be real-time notification platforms, there could be corporate applications that are generating these, could be safety systems, public alerting types of platforms, email, messaging, etc. So there could be any number of different platforms where valuable data needs to be turned into that actionable insight and needs to be streamed and delivered in real time. Those that are interested in that data could potentially be other participants inside of that event, potentially responders and corrective processes, potentially operations and dashboards for the operations or analytic processes, any number of different types of consumers for that incredibly important event data can exist. And so with the real-time event data streaming platform, what we're finding is that organizations are looking for blazingly fast communications during critical events, right? They want to engage in real-time events, either one-way, distributed out, or two-way interactive messages with those consuming and receiving those messages. They want to have the ability to add unlimited events, to have no restrictions, that as new events are created, new categories and classifications of those events, they can distribute at scale. Some levels of guarantee of delivery of that message or acknowledgement of whether that message was not delivered is critical to scale this out to a very large number of events. And then to support and monitor those number of connected users, whom is connected, whom is not, what steps are taken, visualization and services to further understand that, and then really to provide the same experience across all the different platforms, applications and users, interested parties. Those affected could potentially be using a PC with a app, or they could be using their cell phone. It could be an application as well at a responder. So, but providing that same experience, that same ease of use and ability to very rapidly add new devices and add new services and alerts codelessly. Okay, so let's move on to the next step here. And this is where I'd like to please, again, introduce Johnny to present some more information about ePanicButton.
Great.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you. Great. ePanicButton, what we're trying to do is emergency messaging. And that's really brought into two categories. What we're talking about is panic buttons or duress alarms, and then also mass notifications, two separate concepts. We try to bring them together into one platform. Can we see the next slide, please? When we talk about those panic buttons, sometimes call them duress alarms. First of all, that could even be further divided into the corporate, school, workplace environment, and then there's the personal. It's more like the elderly, geriatric, I've fallen and I can't get up buttons. And that's a whole other industry there. We focus in on workplace violence, mass shooting, school shooting prevention through emergency notifications. The problem is back in the day when we first looked at panic alarms, it was literally just a wired button. Like there was a button under your desk and you press the button and there's a wire going to the back room with a big guy who come running to the front if there was a problem. Obviously, the only message you got is a buzz or a light or a ding, and you have no idea what the actual emergency is. Secondly, with these old systems, the sender, the person who's in trouble, had no idea if anyone got it. You don't even know technically if the message got out there, if the ding went off or the light went off. You just know that you pressed a button, but you're not sure if anyone's coming, and that's a big, scary thing. The third thing that's a big cost and it's a big problem with it's still there. This industry is still here, but we're seeing the need to implement physical items into your building, running wires through your ceiling, under your carpet, mounting stuff on your furniture, mounting panels on your wall. That takes time. It takes people to show up. It also, that technology dies in 5 years. That's going to be legacy, old technology. So of course, software is something that can continually be updated. Next slide, please.
Yep, absolutely, Johnny. Johnny, I can hear a little bit of background noise.
Okay, I'll try to reduce that as much as possible. I'm in a quiet room, but I'll get closer to the camera. Maybe that'll be a little better. I'll speak louder.
Thank you.
Great, no problem. So the other thing, when we talk about panic alarms, people often ask, does this call the police? And the reality is panic buttons do not contact law enforcement directly. There's always an intermediary. There's always a call center, a call monitoring center that has live people taking the signal, whether it's a text or a beep or alarm or a phone call, and then they physically call the police department for your jurisdiction to get the support, because those dispatch centers want a live call. I have to admit that the industry, or this profession, is changing. The advent of E911 and then also texting 911, it's changing. So that the real answer is, if you want to know how you can contact your local law enforcement or sheriff's department, check with your dispatch, check with your local jurisdiction on how they're willing to accept the message. They all will take a phone call. Would they be willing to get a text? Would they be willing to get another type of alert? It's changing, and it really is depending upon the jurisdiction. Can we go to the next slide, please? I'm sorry, I just thought of one. Can you go back? Is it possible to go back one? I thought of one more point. The problem with the police also is you only call the police for serious matters, the life and death emergency. What do you do about the suspicious guy in the parking lot? What if there's a person just going off and ranting and raving about your customer service? Is that why you're going to call the police? It doesn't apply. Even if it's something as a suspicious person, that's going to be so low on the officer's track. They're going to be dealing with car wrecks, they're going to be dealing with robberies, other things where you may not see someone for 20, 30, an hour later. So that's one of the challenges also of saying, hey, the only button I've got goes to the police. A lot of the times you don't need the police just yet. Oh, next slide, please. All right, mass notification. Again, back in the day, a lot of this was based around other types of emergencies, tornadoes, tsunamis, I suppose fires as well. And it was typically a siren, as you see in the picture. And that's an area-wide audible alarm for everyone. We're just hoping we're going to blast it out there and hope that everyone can hear this. What's the problem with that? Well, today everyone's got headphones on, or maybe you're inside, or maybe you can't hear it. And again, it's that single message. All you know is the siren's going off, but you don't know what the issue is. I remember sitting in many committee meetings where we would be talking with people about, okay, we have our lockdown drill, we have our active shooter drill, but how are we going to notify the students? How are we going to tell our employees? And we're trying to come up with a system. And a lot of people thought about the fire alarms, pulling the fire alarm so they know, hey, there's an emergency, do something. You can't just stay there in your office. Some problems around that. One was that you're sending people out into the hallways. They have no idea what's going on. They might think it's a fire, and you're actually possibly creating more targets. And also, sadly, especially if you look at what you call the insider threat, like a student or an employee who knows your protocols. And if your protocol is everyone gather at the flagpole out front when there's a fire alarm, guess what? That shooter knows exactly where to go to get most of their targets. So that's one of the major problems with the older systems of alarming people. We talked about code words. People said people forget about the code words, and we said, okay, just over the intercom, just say there's an active shooter, there's everyone run, there's a shooter. That sounds way too chaotic, way too confusing, and we needed a better system. One thing that we definitely realized was that it's good to get the information in multiple ways. I think that's what Mike was talking about, the different endpoints. So we want to see people getting it audibly, they hear it, they can see it, and then now that we have phones, that's probably one of the best ways to communicate through the different ways you can message a person on the phone. Oh, next slide, please. So what do we do here at ePanic? What do we make sure our product has so that we can guarantee? Believe me, this is a tough job, right? I mean, I know emergency notification is difficult. I have to think about my program is being relied upon for people who are alone, facing danger, working in mental health institutions with violent offenders. We have a real need that this works. We need reliability. We need to get fast. And then on top of that, I love to see that versatility, the customization, so that you can really drill down to you get the appropriate resource for the right issue. Next slide, please. Let's break this down over each one. So with ePanicButton, what do we do to ensure that we got it working? It always is going to work. It's going to get there fast, and that we've got that chance to customize it for the exact situation. Next slide. Breaking this down for the mass notifications. As I said earlier, we want to see it in different ways. The ePanicButton uses emails, so you can get a good old email. You can get a text message, because obviously for like younger folks, anyone under 20, the only way you can communicate with them is through a text message. Well, at least with my kids. The third thing, we've got voice calls, so good old, the call will call in. And so we're making sure it comes through. Our signature program is the desktop pop-up alert. That's in the upper right corner. You see the little green rectangle that says low, little thumbs up. That pops up on top of the screen, whatever you're doing. And that really is the most immediate. If you're emailing, if you're working on a spreadsheet, if you're working on a PowerPoint, boom, this thing pops up and makes a noise and it gets your attention, whatever the issue may be. And that's where we try to ensure that reliability. By the way, I used to be in, doing human resources, workplace violence, doing a lot of, I was with the employee assistance programs. And within human resources, redundancy is a bad word. You don't want to use that word out in the break room. But in the safety and security world, it's golden. We want things to get repeated. I don't care if you've got too many messages. We don't want you never getting the message at all. Next slide. Oh, next slide, please.
Yep, thanks.
You bet. Oh, wait a minute. So going back, I think you might have skipped one there. It was about reliability. So with our desktop pop-up, there we go. And that graph is actually a heartbeat. It's nothing technical. It doesn't relate to our program at all. I just need an image. I don't know if y'all heard of a heartbeat test. It's just what my developers use. It's checking in. Are you live? Are you working? Are you on? 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 We want that all the time to make sure when I press that button, that message is going in, and more importantly, that the receivers are going to receive it. This was a real big issue, and we'll talk about it later, why this was so important and why I went to Diffusion for this heartbeat test. Next slide, please.
Yep, thank you so much, Johnny. Johnny, it's potentially that your microphone might be hitting your shirt or something like that. There might be a little bit of noise from that. So I'm moving on to
I'll not move.
All right, here we go. Next slide.
Thank you. Speed. One thing you have to understand about workplace violence shootings, I like the term rampage violence. We know what we're talking about, a disgruntled person coming in there to get their revenge out. These are over in minutes, in seconds. Honestly, when we talked about contacting law enforcement, it's really not an issue. Very, very, very rarely does a law enforcement officer come to intervene and save lives. It's over. The guy killed himself or turned himself in. The one time where it does come into play is when the person flees to another area. That's called a spree killing. And when you go have a shooting in one spot, but then you go to another location, that's when law enforcement often has the best chance for intervention. So the point is, it's got to get there fast. What do we do at ePanic? I say 10 seconds. I want it there in under 10. Even that's way too long, but I'd like to see it under 10 seconds. And what we've shown is that it has been able to be under 10 seconds with Diffusion. Oh, next slide, please. Boy, so along with that, so as I mentioned, I'm in trouble. I press the button. I want someone to get that as fast as possible so they can running down the hallway. Within mass notification systems, one thing that we provide, oh, and by the way, what we're looking at here is for a different platform that we provide, the threat assessment dashboard. And when we talked about sending signals to another dashboard, to another portal, that's where we're using this. With this example, I could say, Johnny, touch screen, hit the support button. I need support on July 23rd. Here's my running list live of who got the message. This comes down into mass notification where there's an active shooter and you want to know who got the message, who didn't, and in real time. Because if you have a large area, let's say, I don't know, the cafeteria, no one from the cafeteria responded to the message, and you're checking it, you're always refreshing that screen, we know something's going on that in the cafeteria, and we know where to send our resources. With emergency management, with all management, it's finding the right resource for the appropriate problem. And we'll talk some more about that. And that's how we can fine tune. It's not this general, oh, there's a problem, somebody do something. We could really drill it down to the specifics. Next slide, please. Awesome. Here we're talking about it right here. One thing that I'm really proud about the ePanic button is you can provide a range of buttons. You can have one button, you can have 500. Well, I wouldn't do that. You can have 20 buttons, you can have 7 buttons. Actually, I would never go beyond 3 or 4. But the idea is our default settings has a support button and a security button. Support generally means, hey, I'm under the weeds. I got an angry customer. I'm not in danger, but I just need help. Or maybe it could be getting worse. Security suggests something much more serious, like I'm in danger. There's a weapon present. You could even fine tune it, like break it down even further. There's a weapon present. There's someone who is just an angry customer, as opposed to someone who's like a robber, who you're going to handle those things differently. A very popular button that's not in our default settings, but people, we give that option, is a medical button. So if you have those AED devices, defibrillators, you have your people trained. Now, if someone has a heart attack or needs one, they press the button. All the people who are trained in that first aid know where those defibrillators are, and they know where to go to help. It's not this, we run down the hallway. Oh, I thought someone was bothering me. I thought you were being attacked. Someone's having a heart attack. Okay, now I got to go run and get the defibrillator. You have that information right away. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of mass notification, I do threat assessment work. And while we talk about, oh, we have an active shooter, or we have a weapon present, very often, these are very rare events, by the way. I want to put it out there. You are at risk when the threat has been made against you. And let's say we have an example of an employee named Johnny. I'll just pick on myself. Johnny got fired, and Johnny says, well, you guys stink, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to hurt all of you people for hurting me. You do a threat assessment. That's a whole other subject. And you determine it's real. Now we need to notify people if Johnny shows up again. So now we got a situation where it's not that, oh, we got an emergency. It's the Johnny situation. We have our protocols. These people do this, those people do that, and we know exactly what the risk is and what we should be doing in this response. And the really nice thing about Diffusion and its versatility is I could create this button in a matter of seconds, in under a minute, and push it out to 10, 100, 100,000, as many people as I need to, so that they've got that instantly and they've got that button ready to go. Next button, please. Or next slide. So going back to, why are we using Diffusion? What does Diffusion bring for us to help with our pop-up alerts? What is it that they've got that makes us want to use the program? And I'll explain that in the next slide. Awesome. Now, this is therapy for me. I'm going to be complaining and letting a lot of my agony and angst through this presentation. We've been around since 2008, and we are now at Diffusion working version 8. Version 8 implies that there's versions 1 through 7. What was the problem with that? Version 1 was great, and like any beta, you don't pick on betas because they it was the first one, was a prototype, and prototypes are pioneers. So it was a great idea at the beginning, but it was a friend of mine actually developed a protocol, and we sent messages sequentially through the IP TCP protocols. So it would hit another computer. It was peer-to-peer. It was a peer-to-peer platform. Hits a computer, and if it was on and awake, it would populate them. It would throw the message. It would give them the pop-up, and then go on to the next person. But if that person was asleep or down, it would hit it, 5 seconds, stop, and then go on to the next one. Can you imagine if we're talking about 5 seconds per receiver? By the time you get to the 20th, we did 100 seconds. I do the math right. Anyways, that absolutely did not work. So we started looking around. We started trying different things. And you might be familiar with some of these platforms that are out here. We used RabbitMQ, which I thought was really great. ZeroMQ, which was pretty good. And then we switched over to Azure's messaging, Microsoft Azure's messaging platform. And I'll be honest with you, I think they're pretty good platforms. And I think that we could have stuck with them in a sense, but where were the problems? One was, and I'll tell you directly, which made me go with Diffusion, is there was really no direct support that I could get. I believe RabbitMQ is open source, if I'm not mistaken, and there are experts out there that I could hire, but it was touch and go, and then whether that person moved on to do something else. I didn't get that support. The messages didn't work. My developers said they were stuck. They needed someone who knew the technology inside and out so that we could get that expert support. Other problems, and I don't know why, but the connections were dropped. So this might be a little advanced. I think Mike's going to talk about pub sub subscriptions, but basically it wasn't connected. That heartbeat wasn't happening. There was no heartbeat. That is a no-go with our organization. We cannot have that. We must need to connect it. So then we went on with our own proprietary SQL-based messaging platform that used the messaging protocols. I'm not a developer. I know enough to be dangerous. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the main issue is that these indexes, and I might be using the term wrong. Again, I don't know what I'm talking about, but it delayed. It built up. It needed to be purged. I guess there's a log being created, and I could figure it out a little bit more, but I realized this is not working. It was taking up to 40 seconds, up to a minute for a message to go. And as I said, shootings are over in a minute. So it's completely useless at that point. So here am I lying in bed. Oh, for your marketing folks. I don't know if I remember telling you, but it was a Facebook ad. I'm lying in bed. I'm looking at my friends' lives, going, oh my goodness, what's wrong with my friends? And then I see an ad for push technology for diffusion. And I got a little bit more into it. And what I saw there was an organization that handles this, that does this. If you can please go on to the next slide. All right. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of the hedgehog principle. I forget the name of the book. What's the name of the book? Good to Great, I think is the name of the book. I can't remember the author. But one thing they talked about is, from my understanding, from what I remember, was the hedgehog does one thing. It's got spiky quills, and that's what it protects. It doesn't have fangs. It doesn't have wings. It doesn't have a giant horns to ram its predators. It just has spiky things, and that works really well. If I could, I want to talk about my introduction, where I talked about myself. Maybe I didn't do a good job. Workplace violence specialist for the state of North Carolina, on the board for As Is. That's As Is used to be the American Society of Industrial Security. Now it's just As Is, on a local chapter, not the national board. Working in the field with the Asheville, North Carolina Police Department, I know security. And when I was going through all my problems, I thought, heck this, I will just become a developer. I'm going to learn everything about C# and .NET programming, and I'll just handle it. And I'm going to start off a new skill development around that. Even though I know a lot about threat assessment, workplace violence, my area of expertise is domestic violence in the workplace. I was going to start a new career path, in a sense, just to make sure my program was done well. And I decided, no, that's a terrible thing. I'm a security person. Find someone else. Thank you. It's Jim Collins. Jim Collins was the author of Good to Great. What I need to do is find someone who's already really good at it and have them do it. So with our other messages, I talked about, we send emails. I researched. I really like Mailgun. I thought that they were a really good, reliable service. They're reliable, but then of course, I'm looking for support. For SMS, we use Message Media. Friendly guys, even though they're all the way in Australia, they're always live. I can communicate with them anytime, 24 hours, and I can get the support. There's never been problems with them, though, as well. The voice calls. Actually, I did that because I really like the owner. I got a long talk with the owner of that company. I liked him, and it's a very simple technology. There's no issues with it. So that's why I brought it in. I decided I am not going to bring in developers to make my own voice call system. I'm not going to develop my own. Oh, that version number 1, ePanic number 1, had a built-in email client, if that makes sense. It was an emailing program. And then I realized that I got to support that. I got to figure out all the new, whatever, Windows 20 comes out and it doesn't work with that anymore. I got to continually support it. But if I find the companies that can handle it and do it right, then I've got it covered. And when I looked at Diffusion, when I saw the customers that they had and the support that they had, which was really critical to me. Right now, we're going through so many key steps that are helping my program ensure that it's going to be reliable, fast, and versatile. We're doing stress tests. Okay, right now, I've done a bunch of tests with 10, 20, 30 computers. What happens with 30,000 computers? I've got state universities on my clientele list. I need to make sure those 30,000 computers can go off just as fast. Those older programs that I was using before, it would have gotten delayed, it would have gotten hung up, and wouldn't have gone through. And that's why I really wanted to get that that support for testing it. But then I know there's one thing within development within the software world is there's problem X, and you can anticipate and what's this one thing I've learned is that from the past, you can learn what the things you need to look out for, and you can watch the read the journals and get online and get into the focus the forum groups. But there's going to be some problem I know that's going to pop up. And while we can handle our side of the client install in our portal for the messaging to go through, I've got all those guys in charge sitting at their computers, banging on the keys to make sure that those connections to those subscriptions are good. And I know Diffusion can make it done right and do it right, but if we're not sure how to do it, we can tap into their support to show us how exactly we can ensure that reliability and speed. And that's really the essence of why we went with Push Technology, for that support, for they've demonstrated they're the hedgehog. Your hedgehog is message communication. My hedgehog is security. So I'm going to find a team of hedgehogs, and we're going to have an army of hedgehogs help to save the world. And that's what we were looking to do. Oh, I forgot about this slide. And then the other thing is, moving forward, I am so excited about where ePanic can go. So right now it's the user sets it off. A person hits a keyboard. There's hardware buttons too. We have USB buttons. But what about access control? What about cameras? What about infrastructure, which I think Mike was alluding to earlier? All this could be plugged into one issue. And if we're going to stay within the security world, what if someone kicks open a door or someone breaks a window? Do you have sensors on those portals so that it could tell when it's being accessed or broken? That could feed in right through Diffusion to our portal to send out those alerts through our system and have it all logged in there. And that's what's going to be really exciting. Again, there's I talked about problem X. Well, there's also opportunity X. There's going to be some new. I'm really excited about blockchain. I want to know how we can incorporate that into ePanicButton as well. And that's where I think when we have the people leading the fields in their area, I know it's going to be covered. Great. So I'm really excited about where we're going with Diffusion.
Great. Thank you so much, Johnny. Wonderful presentation, and I'll be taking the next steps here to show how this is done with Diffusion. And Johnny, feel free to kind of add any notes that you may have as I'm going through this. Okay, so and again, thank you, Johnny. With that said, I'd like to introduce Push Technologies Diffusion. We are an intelligent event data platform. And there's three primary components to our platform. There's a gateway, which enables the data tier to be able to send and publish data into our streaming platform, Diffusion. We have a number of very friendly APIs that are actually very intelligent and are easy to use. They're very consistent across a number of different languages and platforms, and I'll show an example in a minute. And we also have a number of different adapters, and also adapters that are available in the cloud as well, to kind of ease that journey of streaming data into and loading data into Diffusion, no matter what the source is. Then on the application tier, where Diffusion resides, Diffusion really does provide multiple capabilities for wrangling, kind of that third portion of our platform, where on the application level, we have the ability to take in messages. And, I think as Johnny had mentioned earlier about getting the right data to the right consumer. As data comes in, it may be very large. It could be in different formats. It could have additional data in it that isn't appropriate necessarily for particular responders or maybe others that are involved inside of the incident or even at the corporate level. So how do you segment that data? How do you separate it out? How do you prioritize it? And then how do you do things like placing delays or throttles on it for different tiers of receivers, and applying that, so to speak, policy in real time against your wrangling, against a huge number of streaming messages and interested consumers. And then on the client side, now, one wonderful thing that Diffusion does is that we enable a patented technology called Delta streaming. And a benefit from our Delta streaming is that as we're either receiving inbound messages, ingress, or we're delivering messages, we have the ability to actually only send on a binary level the deltas, the changes to that data. Okay, many of our customers are seeing up to 90% of data savings. Just think about the TCO, the savings there for your infrastructure with highly reduced network costs, okay, and highly reduced compute costs as well, because they're no longer parsing or dealing with these huge messages inside of the application or their data or client tiers. This is being done centrally through Diffusion, through our data wrangling and distribution capabilities. Now, on the client side, it uses the same SDKs to subscribe to data from Diffusion itself. And so there could be a difference between a responder or a participant or, let's say, an analytic application as to what types of data they subscribe to. And they receive those pointers. They receive what we call a topic, and they subscribe to that topic, and they just receive the information that they need. And we do this all very securely. Only certain users and systems, and you can ratchet it down, you can open it up. It's really your choice, but there's a security model to really define on the administrative side, on the operations side, and then on the consumption and production side. So end-to-end platform to do that across your data application and client tiers, okay? So when we start to look at this journey of consuming data, wrangling it, securing it, and delivering it, there may be several different types of events, event feeds themselves that use our APIs to kind of publish data into Diffusion. So it could be a region, could be an institution. So I've got an example of some university data that we'll show here in about a minute. Could be public safety data. So I took a open data set that was available from New York City. That was emergencies that streamed through New York City as an example as well. Could be individual reporters, or could be from edge devices as well. Could be from logs or those devices. And again, we've got our responders and analytics, impacted users and systems that now want to subscribe or have that data delivered. Now, I had mentioned earlier that we have one way and we have two way. And so we have the ability to do what's called a publish, and then the consumer subscribe to that, and they get these events in real time. There's also interactive, where there's another pattern called request response, and they have the ability to do that as well. So now, how does this really all start? These different systems, these different clients that are distributing data. You can see the data is complex potentially. It could be large, and then it could be in any format. In this case, I've got a JSON format that's using our API then, and it can do this locally, and it can publish that to Diffusion. Now, Diffusion itself can be in the cloud. It could be in your cloud. It could be on premise. We'll even have Diffusion as a service where our customers start up right away using Diffusion. They don't have to worry about the infrastructure or maintaining the machines or operating systems. We manage that for them behind the scenes using our Diffusion cloud platform. But then they use these APIs and adapters to connect to us. So you may ask, what does this look like? And I kind of describe this as the three-step dance, right? So as you can see, we've got different types of APIs that a consumer can use and begin to work with. And there's three common steps in how you work with Diffusion, or begin data flowing into Diffusion. You connect to Diffusion. You create a topic, kind of a container or channel where you're going to stream your data through, and then you're going to send the message. Now, again, this streams at internet scale. It's very quick, and it's very straightforward to create these different types of consumers, or rather publishers of the data across any number of different languages themselves. Okay, so this happens to be a C#.NET example. Now that the data is flowing into Diffusion, we give the ability, unlike other messaging platforms where the data's flowing and you don't necessarily have as much introspection into the data, right? So there's so much more programmatic resource and requirement for that. Inside of Diffusion, you begin to get visualizations of the data itself so that you can begin to model your event data itself. And so here I've got two primary classifications. I've got emergency data, and then I've got notification data that goes across universities. So for emergencies, there might be by location, could be the types of notifications by location, maybe the types of emergencies themselves, and how to really kind of segment those out and get that data very rapidly. And we're talking about rapid distribution of data that consumers are receiving this data in a matter of milliseconds. On the messaging layer through Diffusion itself, okay? And again, with universities, right? So event details by institution, and I can really start to segment and augment and enrich this data itself as it flows very rapidly, by the way. With an event data streaming platform, it is extremely rapid, much more rapid than other messaging platforms that you may have seen or used in the past. And the way that we do this, the way that we apply our rules against this, the way that we wrangle data inside of Diffusion is that we enable topic trees. And basically what this does is it creates another view of the data as it's coming in, okay? It creates it as reference data. And there are many different services and functions inside of Diffusion that enable you to create these in kind of a one-line configuration to, let's say, take all the university data that's coming in, and it may be a large amount of data, like here I've got Beijing University, and then separate that out, okay, by the event type, who's reporting it, et cetera. And these are through services and features inside of what we call topic views themselves, okay? And we start to build this tree, which is a representation of how consumers can access this data and how you model your data. There are other services like being able to insert data, to combine data, right? So I might want to combine data about my university, potentially with weather data. And so that now I can start to stream combined data that might be much more valuable to the responders, okay? Or how about the ability to provide the right data to a consumer right when they connect, right? They don't necessarily have to ask for what data that they want. Potentially they might just simply connect, and all of a sudden now, depending upon whom they are, they're receiving that intended data. So, you know, how does this work, right? So we've got our inbound raw data, and how do we model this? And again, through our topic views, we have these one-line configurations, and inside those configurations, we have functions like expand. So here I'm getting a list of, and it's just a stream of constant information from universities. And so now I can visualize these independent universities. I can start to track data and stream data for these individual universities using the Diffusion and expand feature. Here we've got another example of, now that I'm streaming my universities, maybe I want to go for a region. Maybe I want to see all data as a responder from a particular locality, such as Colorado or California. And so here, using the Diffusion scalar features and potentially insert features to add more data to enrich it, I can highly focus on and create these views. Now, we're not replicating the data, okay? So this is how we're highly performant as well, right? These are simply views on top of the existing data, but allows you at scale to visualize and to get access to that data itself, okay? And so here we're using the scalar feature to break it out, break this data out a little bit more from what it looks like in this top left-hand corner of JSON and it's still streaming as JSON, into diffusion and separation by region. State in this example could be really anything. And then lastly, the emergencies, right? So let's say with that New York City data that's coming in, I want to, maybe I'm part of the fire department and I want to see all fire data, or a responder that works with the fire department. I want to see all data that flows. Or I could be on campus security or campus operations, and I want to see streaming, different streaming events as they're happening across the campus itself. And this would be very much implemented inside of the ePanic's platform, okay? And so this would be an underlying technology supporting the business operations and business value being driven by ePanic. And again, we've separated out fire events using the diffusion scalar technical function behind the scenes. Now that we have our data organized, modeled, and it's streaming, we also have the ability to um, define rules and roles against this data. Now, these rules and roles themselves can be implemented in real time, okay? Many other messaging platforms require a little bit of additional work and potentially a restart in some situations to dynamically apply these security rules themselves. And so with diffusion, as these rules are added and as they're modified, we can just simply, let's say, have responders at a specific university only provide them with read and select data. They may not be authorized to modify the original message itself as it comes in, right? So there are different levels of roles that we can assign. And then now we can assign these roles and have any number of different principals. Now, diffusion can tie into multiple different security platforms as well. And so we could tie into, let's say, Active Directory and other technologies like that through our extensible framework and ease of use with the platform. Again, this is all low code to no code configuration, really improving the agility of distributing these types of capabilities. Just imagine an enterprise-wide security scaled platform that ties right into your data layer and into the data streaming itself. And so at the distribution side and delivery side, I've mentioned our patented Delta streaming before. I've shown examples of how we map the data. And I've mentioned that we can potentially throttle or delay or provide other types of policy and enforcement inside of diffusion itself as these messages are being delivered. We can deliver only the latest message. We have the ability to deliver histories, time series of messages themselves. And let's say in some common chat applications, we want to keep that history inside of that thread. And so we have time series capabilities. And then we also have the ability to massively distribute that. So our infrastructure can be in any one of those different environments that I mentioned earlier. It could be cloud, diffusion as a service. It could be deployed in maybe multiple different HA and DR types of environments. And we have replication services to ensure that that data is distributed through any number of platforms and that those messages themselves can be fanned out at scale, okay? And again, we have examples here on the right, just provide data for Baker College, maybe just subscribe to fire emergencies, right? So, or maybe notifications for Alabama, right? So we enable this and we enable organizations to do this extremely efficiently. And all of these are just use cases and examples where it takes an organization such as yourselves or Johnny's ePanic organization to really take advantage of the platform and start to use us to separate the data and distribute this data, organize it, collect it, and again, distribute at speed and scale. And just an example again of how this is done on the consumer side. Again, we have APIs and adapters, and this is showing that's those same 3 steps. And this look and feel is the same across .NET as it is through Python or C, C#, JavaScript. And so here we're connecting to Diffusion, and this can connect to really any system that is Diffusion. It can connect to any different defined topic stream, just show me the universities, and it can get very fine-grained. Here's another differentiator, is that we can define very high-level topics, channels to listen to. We don't have to necessarily just ask for one. We can, as long as we're an authorized user, but we can actually say, give me all data for this particular university. I don't care whether it's fire or whether it's attendance. I just want to see all data, or you can become very fine-grained. This is a differentiation for an event broker, a streaming event broker, to have these capabilities and this power to do this at scale. So if we kind of wrap up here, we've seen data being consumed into Diffusion from live event feeds itself using our APIs and adapters. We've shown examples of how to wrangle the data using Diffusion's topic views. We've shown an example and a methodology of how that data could potentially be secured itself. It's encrypted, but also assigned to specific roles by the path of the data, by that topic. We can get that fine-grained, or we can be coarse-grained. And then how to assign that to users, and then how to deliver that through our distribution mechanisms, leveraging our patented Delta streaming capabilities and other distribution functions as well. And so with our combined solution between ePanic and Push Technology, we inject reliable, real-time, versatile notifications into your business processes, enabling really making better decisions for the event as the event is happening. I think Johnny mentioned that it was critical that, you know, in a matter of seconds that these events are addressed and decisions are being made as to what to do about these events, right? Improving safety and protecting your most valued assets, right? Connect any client and system to these very, very important notifications that are going on, and then rapidly be able to add new notifications, to add new services and feeds, to really expand your services, to continuously improve your capabilities to distribute those types of life-critical and mission-critical types of messages. I invite you to please get started with Diffusion. You can try Diffusion Cloud. Just go to www.pushtechnology.com, and there'll be a link to go to cloud. We have a quick start guide, which basically is a rapid start. It will show examples and guide you towards what those 3 steps are to begin using Diffusion itself. We have multiple different webinars that are out there. Here's an example about building a real-time messaging application. It's a chat application using our time series features, and explore our Developers Hub. And our Developers Hub as well has many different areas for gaining additional information about Diffusion, and even our examples are out there. So let's say you get started with the cloud and you're curious about potentially what some examples of how others or how different features are deployed. Those are all freely available inside of GitHub as well. So with that, I want to thank everybody for your time today, and so much thank you to Johnny for helping and sharing your company's vision and what you're doing and your use and selection of Push Technology. And with that said, we have a few minutes left here for any questions that may come. So I'd like to open it up to any Q&A, and I do see here. So from a anonymous attendee, how do I discuss my particular notification needs and purchase this solution? And so please reach out to us through pushtechnology.com. There's the option to chat with us, and that will connect you directly with our organization, and the correct person will be in contact. And so I'll open it up for any additional questions, if that answered your question. Another question here is, and this one came for Johnny, how do you measure cost effectiveness in deciding to use your own custom developed protocol compared to using a third-party solution?
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a great point. So this refers to the point of how much do I develop the technology, the protocols myself, or do I use a third party? And where do you determine that cost? Obviously, there's the initial development cost of having the developers build it and then support it. And that's a larger cost up front, where it's usually a smaller cost to pay for the service. And so at a certain point, 3 years out, 4 years out, then in a sense, you'll be quote unquote losing money by using someone else's service instead of developing your own. But that's not taking into account is when I talked about all those problems that pop up there, the problem X, where you've got to anticipate what those issues and address it. If I have another party handling those issues, then there's a value in that. It's sort of like it's an expenditure that you can't really anticipate, but you know will come up at some time. The bottom line, it comes down to your own need, how large your development team is, how much faith you have in your developers to handle any unknown situations coming up, and their willingness to adopt to new technologies.
Great, thank you, Johnny. And Johnny, I realize I answered the first question in the frame of Push Technology. Yeah. Likewise for ePanic, how could they contact you and discuss needs?
Oh, please, ePanic button right there at the bottom. It's ePanicButton.com. If you go area code 919-590-0574, or contact at ePanicButton.com. We'll be glad to. And just like you all have the free trial, I know one thing I'll say about Diffusion is you really wanted to make sure it worked for me before we move forward. That's how we feel. Bang on it, make sure it works. Free trial till you're positive this is what you need.
Great, thank you, Johnny. I can see we have one more question here. Where do you see the future going with emergency notifications?
Okay, I think the weak link in any security system is humans, like human error, people just making mistakes. So I think there's going to be more and more Internet of Things handling the messaging. So if I could get even a little scary here, facial recognition. If you have all your folks of your employees or facial recognition identified, and someone is terminated and removed, then you got your cameras scanning the parking lot, and they pick up that face again. That's going to notify the system. So we're not counting on a person seeing someone and pressing a button. But we're going to see more technology stepping in to make those notifications occur. And the other side is mobile. I think we're going to be moving away from a lot of desktop systems. What do I mean here is more mobile apps and sort of like the thin clients where you go up and you can connect to whatever, but your personal information is connected to some cloud storage item, whereas you can log in and then you have your connection. Where this applies to security emergency notifications is it's going to be much more customized to the person.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much, Johnny. I can see we're getting close to the top of the hour here. And if there aren't any other questions, or Johnny, any thoughts you'd like to share, please do so. Okay, great, great. Okay. So thank you all for attending. Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you.
And please join us again for our next webinar. Please check the pushtechnology.com website and our webinars, and we will be hosting further information about event-driven data streaming. Thank you so much and have a pleasant day.